Hi, everyone, and welcome to Marketing Corner, episode 82.
Woo, 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 woo. That was weird. Sorry. That was bad.
I don't know what happened there, but good for you. That was great. No, it's not Corona. Don't worry. We're not back in Corona times, but we are still remote because I have a little baby boy who needs me every hour. So
that's the thing, right?
Here.
She needs he needs milk, right?
He needs to be fed and changed and burped and
yep.
So, but we're here. We're doing it because we love you.
Shout out to you guys, the fans.
Shout out to the fans. Literally, though, we were talking. Sorry to sidetrack, but we've been having people reach out to us asking when's the next episode coming out, which is a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, it feels good. You missed us, we missed you. It's mutual.
Yeah, you like us. You really like us. All right. So today, what we're going to talk about, and this is my chance to do a little humble brag.
Do it.
If that's okay with you, Casper.
Go for it. The floor is yours.
Thank you. At the end of May, I took the Danish citizenship test in Danish, på dansk. Everything from the Viking times all the way up to 2023. And I studied my ass off, and I got a perfect score. 100%.
Boom.
And
mic drop.
Mic drop. I was very proud. I was very surprised because I did, in your head, you think you've definitely gotten something wrong, but I got 100%, which is very rare, and I'm very proud. And it got me thinking of the way that I learn, because I have a very nerdy way of learning, which is I have to read it, write it, repeat it, write it. And I learn from writing a lot. And so this has also helped my career and how I learn, because writing, presenting, etc. We're going to dive into it. But it got me thinking of how often do we as professionals know how we learn? Do we, everyone has their own way of retaining information, of how they learn and how they develop. Do we think enough about that? Do we know that about ourselves enough to implement it when we have to learn something? And how do we all learn? What are the different ways? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk with you about today, Casper.
I love it. I think it's such a good segue. First of all, congratulations. Way to fucking go. We were talking just before about this. You probably know more about Danish history than I do now.
Give me that passport, baby. Give me that EU passport. I have a British one. It's useless. Give me an EU passport.
But I think it's super interesting. I really want to transition into talking because I think as an agency owner, it's this is actually a big topic for me. It's not because and it's a little bit different than working in-house in my opinion. But I'll start with myself first. So I'm probably the worst because the way I learn is by doing. I'm only learning by doing. I was the really bad student in that way because I could sit in a class and I attended all classes, but actually I got nothing out of the classes because I was just listening to someone explain or watch. That was not how I learned. I learned by doing the things. Mm-hmm. So if I had attended practice sessions where I could do calculations, then I would learn how to do it. But by just having someone explain or read it in a book, I might catch on a little bit. I can read a book and I'll catch the essence of the book. Don't get me wrong. But if I truly want to be good at something, for me personally, I really have to sit down and do it. Mm-hmm. That's at least how I learn. It seems like you're a bit exactly the same.
Yeah, I take a lot of notes. So the way I learn is if I hear something, you've seen this, even in Marketing Corner, we joked about it in a previous episode where, I come with notes and I write things down. And I have notebooks everywhere because if I hear it, I need to write it down. And then the way that it really sticks in my head is usually when I teach it to others. So
that's true. I have the same about that one though.
Yeah, the podcasting and mentoring is where it's really helpful because then we have to, to teach someone something, you have to know it so goddamn well and be able to answer questions. So you have to understand all the different aspects to it. And one of the things I think that's helped me with my career is in the process of writing things down, I started making lots of slide decks, right? Like when I'm trying to explain a strategy, when I'm trying to explain an initiative I want to launch and why, I found when I sat at the table, and I will say I was also the only woman at the table, which different podcast episode, but I was the only female voice in the room. And I found it very difficult to get buy-in. I found it very difficult to just the words I would say was hard to compel people. But when I showed them slides and I would visualize the data and I would show the thought process in bullet points, not only did I learn it better, but I found that other people would understand me better. So maybe it was an easier way for me to communicate. And so by doing slides and gathering data all the time is where I got my footing in data-based marketing because I needed to know my shit, right? Like inside out. And that's how I remembered it and learned it and blah, 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 blah. So I think that's really helped propel my career, is learning how to learn and implementing it.
That's great. I love that. I've taught a lot of social selling. We've talked a lot about that and historically. And one thing I always say when I teach that is that posting on LinkedIn, and this is as an example here, is it forces you to think about what you do, why you do it, and by doing that, it makes you sharper at what you do. So by teaching others, it becomes you better at doing what you do. So and that's actually, you can quote me on that. That's but that's actually also how I feel about it. Like whenever I'm forced to teach others about things, that actually makes me sharper, because like I have to be 100% sure about what I'm teaching them. Like,
and I think it also helps you broaden around that topic, right? Because you kind of think, well, what about this aspect? And what about this aspect? You kind of become, you have to be really holistic with it, because you have to be ready to answer any question that might come.
Yeah. Talking about what you do makes you sharper at doing what you do. That's kind of like my take on it. So I think I totally agree. And I'll jump into the kind of like my point of view here around agencies, or at least like why that's a little bit special. Because like maybe we'll start with a question here. So how do you then transfer that knowledge, like and the way of knowledge learning? How do you transfer that to your team? So when you have a new person starting on your team, how do you think about how they learn? Do you ask them, hey, how do you learn best? Is that something you adjust to, or?
No, I mean, I don't, and I should. Because we were talking about this off air, because I document everything, because I'm the notes person. I'm a notes gal. So I put, everything in Notion with screenshots and links and blah, 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 expecting other people to be a nerd like me to read all of these things and retain it. And they don't. Newsflash. When you send someone a wall of text, when you send someone a Notion page, how much are they reading? How much are they remembering? Great question.
And I'm a perfect example, because like I have people on my team who are all about Notion and documenting, and those people, that's how they learn. Like, and that's not how I learn. So when I get new people on my team, the way I teach is like, hey, let's go into this room, and then I'll show you everything you need to know about this thing or whatever it is we're talking about. And then we'll book half an hour, and then I'll walk through. And is that the most scalable way, more practical? No, but that's how, if I was on the other side of the table, would have loved for it to be. But as I'm scaling and as I'm hiring people, I'm realizing, okay, that's definitely not how everyone learns, and that's also not super scalable all the time. It's okay, but that's not how it should be, because it's also containing the knowledge within me. Yeah. But at the same time, like all these people who are on my team who document all this is super good, and I'm asking them to do it. But at the end of the day, it's not for my sake, because like I'm super. Like sometimes once in a while I do use it, and I think I have the best example when I have one of my people on the team, Johannes, a great guy, one of my first hires. He's still here, I love him. He made an FAQ when he started at Sparkforce. We didn't have an FAQ, we were 3 people back then, 2 people. And so he made an FAQ, and I remember, Johannes, why are we making an FAQ? Like, why are we spending time on this? Like, yeah, but it's going to be good as we grow. And like, sure, whatever. That is the document we've used the most in Sparkforce.
Nice.
Because it has like passwords to internet, passwords to the building. Where can you find the Google Drive? Where can you find access to tools and all these things? And that's the thing that most people, when they start Sparkforce, they enjoy the most. So I've just caved and be like, okay, I give it to you. This was the best decision ever. So,
but I wonder how many times do people go, like, we have the same thing, but I know I would guarantee you 90% of the time someone's like, hey, what's a Wi-Fi password? Out in Slack or something. You're like, read the documentation.
Yeah, and don't. I've done it multiple times, and then Johannes is be like, it's in the FAQ, man. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah. There was a reason you spent time on that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
But so I think but as maybe for me to get back on track here, it's just like saying, I feel like it's a little bit different from having an in-house team to an agency. Because then in an agency, what I have to do is that it's a lot about processes. Like when we get, let's say we get someone to do paid social. Well, we have a very specific process in how we do things for specific things. If you go in and become, let's say, someone who's head of demand gen or demand generation manager at Onomondo, yes, you have ways you do things like around the brand and those kind of things, but the process around like how you do ads, you might not have that documented necessarily. Right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But my point is that's probably for that person to figure out. if that makes sense, right? And don't get me wrong, of course, we do a lot of like, customizing and stuff, but there's also things where like, okay, when we do LinkedIn ads, these are the conversion points we always set up. These are the things we do every time, like, because that we've tried and tested this a million times. This shit works. This is how we want to do things. And I think that is different from an agency to an in-house. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree. I think the manager and me would love everything documented, because if someone gets hit by a bus tomorrow, we lose all that knowledge. But let's be real. I don't have someone writing down, log into Google Ads, click here, click here, click here. You know, you have to innately know some stuff. And we're not starting from scratch all the time. We don't have new clients every time that we have to make a pixel, and we don't have to do that. So
you do your Google Tag Manager setup once, and then you probably don't touch it in a year or two, right?
Yeah,
we do that every month, like almost every week, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's different processes and stuff like that. And we have to save knowledge, and we have to save, talking points and new features and things like that. Whereas you're almost starting over again every week or every month whenever you have a new client, and getting to learn their processes. And that's, we don't have to do that. We have to learn different departments, but overall we're still the same organization, same product, same teams.
And it's actually one of the things I'm thinking a lot about, and it's something where we improved our process. Because like in the beginning, and it still is, like in the sales process, it's very much on the growth lead, typically me, or in Frederick or Ethan or some of our growth leads joining soon. But it's we're part of the sales process. And the sales process is not too much, the team is not involved because they need to focus on the clients we actually have. And then once they're onboarded, of course, the rest of the team gets involved. That's typically the process, right? But my point is, then we learn so much about the client before we involve the team. So a challenge we have is that how do we transfer that knowledge to the team? So once they start working with us, the team is not like, oh, nice to meet you. Who are you guys? Like, what do you do? Like they can't start from. And in the beginning, like a year and a half ago, that transition was awful. Like it was literally, hey guys, and then my team showed up at the kickoff. I like literally spent 5 minutes. Hey guys, this is what they do. We're gonna be fine. And then we would show off the kickoff, and the team would be like, okay, what's going on? Like, great, nice to meet you.
That's not a good look. Yeah.
No, and I quickly discovered this, unfortunately. So I was like, okay, so now we spend a lot of time on like internal kickoffs before the real external kickoffs. But I think my point with that is just saying that's how, at least that's our process for our internal learning. But what I hope our next step will be is to take that. So now we define that process, but also say like, okay, that helps the people who like to learn a bit like me, but maybe there's also people who like to do it differently. So how do we make sure that they also feel prepared before a kickoff? If that makes sense.
It's interesting. While you were saying that, I was just thinking of how when we do marketing, right? How we get our message across. Well, we do blogs, we do videos. We do webinars. We do maybe a free trial. So it's kind of like the reading, a podcast, the reading, the listening, the watching, so you kind of try to touch every channel to make sure that however people are ready to access you, they can access you. And it's almost the same with how you want to get that information across. Like, I think that's a really good question you asked me at the top of the show of like, do you ever ask people how they learn? And then maybe some people would prefer something in an audio format. Maybe people would prefer a webinar. Maybe people would prefer it written down. It's not really scalable to do it in tons of different ways, but just having the ability to make people understand that we want to do it in a way that they can retain it is, I guess, a good first step, right?
Exactly. And I think it, at least as an agency, it's kind of interesting because this also goes beyond what we can control. Because when we work with clients, they also have different ways of communicating. So a lot of our communication is Slack, right? Slack based. That's how we work, and we like to do Slack, and then we like to do weekly calls. But it's kind of funny because like the Slacks are for maybe the people who like to communicate on Slack, though. And I don't get me wrong, I like that. But also I like the weekly catch-ups are important for me because that's when I feel people, and that's how I love to communicate and learn about what's going on, right? So that's actually really important for me. So that's kind of what I involved in process. But my point was saying that we had a previously, that's how I learned it, the experience the first time. We had a client, really great relationship, everything's fine. But and he, the CMO here, he's not he does the catch-ups and stuff, but he's not a big fan of that. What he does is Loom videos. He doesn't write a lot of Slack messages. So what he does is like he records a 2-minute or 3-minute loom and just like, hey guys, and then explains everything and shows what he wants, and then he sends that. Instead of jumping on a call, he sends that. And I have another client who does exactly the same right now. And I have to admit that part, like I'm pretty bad at that myself, but I love it. Like I love it. I love doing that actually, or I love receiving those, because it's like that's how I actually learn the best.
Yeah.
If that's important to you, and then you take the time to record a 1-minute or 2-minute loom, man, that's great. I love that. It's not for everyone, but for me, that's actually really good.
And that's one of the things I do. I do a lot of voice notes, right? I mean, usually now, because I usually have a baby in my arms or something like that, so I can't really text. But like when I'm trying to get a message across, sometimes it's a voice note, because then I know that when people are commuting, or if they're driving, or or if their hands are busy, they can get the message, and I can explain it. And I think the other thing too is a little tangent, but like you can convey when you're joking, and you can convey things a little bit better than you can on Slack. Sarcasm. But that's a really good idea. I think maybe that's something I might try to do is more Loom videos, because I just do a big wall of text, and then I get really worried that people aren't going to understand me, so I use a lot of words to explain what I mean, and then people get, overwhelmed or bored.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, it's not something, and I think my idea, I haven't done this to be honest yet, but my idea is also to talk with the agency, or like with the clients in the future, the new ones we get in, about like, how do you guys prefer to be communicated to, and how, and this is how we would like to be communicated to. And having that some sort of, I don't know, if a slide, or like talking to the clients before when we start a relationship, saying like, hey, are you okay with us communicating like this? And then would you also like so I personally, I like the weekly chats, but this person over here, he definitely, he's more a Slack kind of guy, and this guy is more like Loom video, whatever. So just so they know, like, that doesn't mean they have to follow it, but like, just so they have a good idea of, like, if you really want to make sure, like, this is the best way to communicate to that person. I think that's cool. I don't think a lot of people do that. But
no, I don't think. I mean, I definitely don't. I just assume everyone reads everything that I tell them to read. I know you read all the notes I send you, Casper. Every episode.
All of it.
Here are my thoughts. And it's even worse now, because I only really have in between feedings to get anything done. So the second like he's asleep, or the second I'm like my hands are free, I'm just like, every thought in my head, here it is, and that can be a little overwhelming. So it's, I don't know, we kind of went from learning to communicating, but it's all kind of the same. How do we get people to retain that information, especially with your team?
I think it's important, and I think it's something a lot of people don't think about. I think that's also why we're doing this episode, right? Like navigating how your team learns, and it's probably something that should be like talked about in the recruitment process, or at least in the onboarding process. Like, how do you actually learn the best? I have 2 people starting in next week, and honestly, I haven't asked them how they learn the best, so I'm not better than anyone else here, but I probably should, and now at least I'll think about it now before they start.
Yes, that's all we ask, because we do also, like, we look at your working style and working method. Are you an outgoing person? Are you an introvert? Are you this, that? But we don't really take into account your learning styles and how you best retain information. And we need to retain a lot. We have to think a lot. We have to think a lot on our feet. We have to know things, like that. And that's, when I meet with my C-level, and they want to know our numbers. The only reason I know the numbers is because I made a slide deck from my team the day before in our team meeting. So it's not necessarily I do it for my team, but I do it for me as well. Because the second I write those numbers down, the second I put it in a graph, boom, it's in my brain. And so when I'm asked in that meeting, what's your conversion rate? What's your, what's the sales velocity? What's happening with your closing rate? I know the numbers, not because I'm Rain Man, but because I just did it the other day, and it sticks in my brain. And it's an important thing for marketers to have, because we have to know everything. And the second we look like we don't, people start questioning us, right?
That's so spot on. That's so spot on. Like, that's also as an example, just literally from today, I was talking to a marketing team we just started working with. And I had worked with the high-level C-levels, and now I was introduced to the rest of the team. And so I had to present the strategy we put together. And I I didn't even like, I used the slides, but I didn't need the slides because I did the slides. I did the strategy and then put it into the slides. So I was going through the slides, but I could explain everything because like I knew exactly what it was I wanted to do. Like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, blah, blah, blah. And it's because, and they feel like, whoa, he really knows his shit. I'm like, yeah, but it's because I've did this. And this is my version of learning by doing, by literally doing the strategy made me like, okay, now I know exactly what it is. I don't... and it's very clear sometimes when, like, for instance, sometimes I help, or like we help each other, the growth leads. But then when Frederick and Ethan, let's say they've done a strategy and I haven't been that much involved, and then when they go through it, I'm like, okay, I can clearly feel that I'm not as comfortable because I'm not the one who's done it. Like, I understand everything that's going on. Like, don't get me wrong, but I'm not comfortable in explaining all of it 100% because I'm not the one who's done the whole thought process of actually doing it. And that, I think that comes back to this whole how we learn, and that's very, I think we're the same in that way. We need to be the ones putting in the numbers or doing the actual stuff then it sticks.
Yep. And that's like when we do public speaking, right? When I do my public speaking, you don't want to sit there and read the slide, right? You don't want to sit there and you have to be dynamic. You have to be talking to the audience. You have to be looking at the audience. You can't have every word for word on the slide. So you need to kind of memorize it, but in a way that it's organic and it feels natural, and that's how you get these bullet points. You practice. I mean, I always practice. Of course I do, but I practice and I record myself when I do it too, when I prepare. So I say even like, oh, do I do weird stuff with my hands? Do I do I say a lot? You know,
I have a weird goal, and it's just a little bit off topic, but also on topic. But I have a bit of a weird goal. I won't call it, like, I haven't put it as an official goal. Maybe I should, and maybe we're going to do it right now. But I want to one day do a talk and an event without slides. It doesn't have to be super long, because I think 30 minutes without slides really pushing it. But let's do 15, 20 minutes with no slides. The people leave that talk and feel like, and rate it really high. So that is I'm so what do you call it, like inspired or motivated by the people who are capable of doing that. I think I can. I just never tried. Like, have you ever done a talk where you didn't bring slides or anything?
I don't think so.
No, exactly.
I don't. No, I can't really. I mean, aside from introducing, I was the host of our Made for IoT Summit, so I was introducing people. But no, I've never really talked about my expertise without something to point to.
Because I feel like that's like a test on, like, because first of all, you've got to know your stuff, but also like storytelling and captivating your audience, right? Like really, and so
like a TED Talk. I'd love to do a TED Talk.
A TED Talk, essentially, that's a TED Talk. Yeah,
it's a TED Talk. Yeah, without slides.
Yeah.
All right, noted.
Yeah.
Does the podcast count as unscripted?
I don't feel like it's just you and me, right? Like it's kind of like, have you ever noticed,
us,
like
you, me, and 6,000 listeners? Hey,
what up? But I think my point is just like, it doesn't feel that way. It's actually like, once you hit that threshold of, like, I think it's like 30 people, 50 people, then I don't care if it's 50 or 2,000. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but it doesn't matter. It's just a big crowd. Like, if it's 200 or 500 people, like, yeah, I know it's more than twice as big, but it doesn't matter to me. It's actually more terrifying or like intimate when it's like 10 people.
Yeah.
Because then you can see all of their faces and their reactions. That sometimes, I helped this like small startup. They asked me, can you come and talk about your experiences? And then I was expecting 30, 40 people to show up, and only 10 people was there. It's like, okay, cool. But that was actually really, like, because they asked questions, it was very intimate because I could see all their reactions and everything, right? And I was almost more nervous before, like, going on. There wasn't a stage, but like before talking to that room than I would be like talking at an event I did not too long ago with like 60, 80 people or something. Like,
well, yeah, because you know that they're not going to ask you questions, and that's the big thing, right? It's
exactly. And you can't see all their reactions and emotions. With the 10 people, you can literally spot, and they almost know all their names, like, and you say hi to them, right? Like,
and that's where you really need to know your stuff, and you need to And it's not enough. I think this is the other thing that people get wrong. It's not enough to just memorize. It's not enough to memorize and just regurgitate. You have to know it so well that if you get thrown, if you have a question, you can respond and still look like you know what you're talking about. And one thing that just pops in my head is when I was at Sassiest in Malmö, there was, you were there. Yay.
Yeah, I was there. I was supporting you. Boom, boom.
You were supporting me. But as I was speaking, I said something and I heard someone in the audience crack a joke. Like not a heckling, but I said I can't remember who's the defender or something. And they're like, legal. And I was able to go like, yeah, that was really good. Actually, that's a really good point. And I kind of was able to engage with them and then get back to what I was doing, and it didn't throw me. And I think if you're not sure what you know and you're a bit nervous, something like that could crush you, And if I didn't remember and retain and know this stuff inside out, that could crush me and make me feel defeated. But I was able to roll with it and actually enhance the presentation because it was a bit more human.
Yeah, and I think I watched your presentation, right? So I remember it, and like you knew your shit. Like you didn't need your slides. You had your slides, but you actually didn't need them. And I feel like that's some of the feedback I always get, and I have a feeling you get the same, is that when I get feedback, like I might be like, a lot of people go like, yeah, it was a little bit chaotic, Casper was super energetic, went a little bit too fast. But one of the feedback points that the positives I always get is like, he really seemed like he knew his shit. Yeah. And I feel like you get the same, and that's because we've learned it, we've done the stuff, so now it's so ingrained into us that like, yes, I have the slides, but I don't actually need them.
No, yeah, and I practiced so many times that I didn't, need to look at the slides, but it's more for everyone else, so you didn't just see me. It's like, look, here's what I mean. Here's the visual. But
to sum up this episode a little bit, like I think one of the takeaways I would love people to take is that think a little bit about how you and your team learns. And it doesn't have to be like a documented process necessarily, but like you ask your team how they learn, and maybe they do need a documented process, but also maybe they just need a short Loom video. It's different.
Yep. And speaking as the nerd who likes to write everything down, don't make fun of people who like to write things down. Maybe we're nerds, but we're going to remember the shit out of this. So no, but I think just to reiterate what you're saying, figure out how you learn, because that's super important to progress your career and just your own knowledge, right? It doesn't have to be career focused. That helps your memory, helps you learn new things. And also maybe try to figure out a way to cater to your team's different learning styles, because not everyone learns the same way. Cool.
So on that note, go out and learn some stuff, people.
Go learn some stuff.
And tell us what you learned.
Yes. Loom video for Casper. Write it down for me.
Exactly. On that note,
Lovely.
Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone. Bye.